Hello, my friends. So I just wanted to come on here and talk a little bit about borderline personality disorder and ancestral veneration. It's been a really weird, long, interesting process of discovering my roots. And before I start getting into that, I guess I first wanted to just identify the roots of borderline personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder is something that I was diagnosed with quite a bit of time ago, and I very much resonated with it when I was given the diagnosis. And to this day, it's really nice to have something to either look at or have be a description, and you feel yourself that it resonates, that it aligns. One of the things that they teach us not to do as a patient inside therapy is to identify ourselves or quote unquote box ourselves in with specific diagnoses or symptoms. It can perpetuate the experience. That's a theory that some psychologists and therapists and psychoanalysts have. And I'm sure there's some validity to that. Actually, I know there's some validity to that, but it's not the capital truth with the T. There's so many different experiences or types of experiences that people have along the human psyche level. Just as a human, we experience a multitude of different realities and experiences. So to say that one thing is true is kind of difficult. However, I can speak from my own personal experience, and having been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which is generally marked by periods of extreme emotional instability, extreme lack of identity. And again, I'm speaking from my own personal experience, but these are kind of the main bullet points that show itself in borderline personality disorder. So the ones that I talk about here today are the ones that I really resonate with, as anybody who experiences anything will talk from their point of view. So that's what I'm doing now. But the main bullet points are, emotional instability, extreme disturbance of moods, extreme or lack of identity in knowing who you are, interpersonal relationship problems, which to me I experience that from not knowing who I am. So an inability or a difficulty to integrate myself into partnership or relation with myself or even the rest of the world. Doesn't necessarily have to be one-on-one. Which kind of brings me to this video. So something that's been interesting is I've had a severe and sincere lack of identity for the past 1.5 years now. And trying not to stick to the cognitive bias of what you seek ye shall find. However, I can't deny the parallels that I experience with the information that's being fed to me through the internet, through social media, things like Saturn return or the year of 27 being difficult for people, kind of being a year of growth experientially, astrologically where my planets have been aligned. I would say I am a firm believer in astrology. Firm meaning there's still room for growth, as in it's like a hard tofu that I still think there's some growing pains in there and some skepticism that I do have. However, most of the time I think it's a soft, fertile ground for me to land on. It is kind of smushy, so it's not like concrete, if that makes sense. Excuse me. However, I do utilize it as a valuable resource. So, yeah, if there's anybody out there who wants to gravitate towards astrology, I don't deny it. I think it's a gorgeous thing. However, I'm gonna tell you I have my own skepticism about it, and I still use it as a cognitive bias, I guess. I don't know. Whew. Anyways, what I wanted to talk about was this lack of identity that borderline personality disorder patients have, and since I want to say the Black Lives Matter movement has come out, and I say that with hesitancy because it has been an issue. It's not something that's new. It might be, and it has been new to me in terms of my awareness of it, and with that awareness of it, becoming aware of it, the felt experience that I have with discovering the truths about the injustices of our world and of our time, and having gone in and done the work internally to discover my own anti-blackness or ignorance or racism, not just towards Black people, but other demographics and groups of people as well, the cultural norms that have been fed to me, not to blame anybody, but the air that I do breathe and how it's played a role and perpetuated itself in my interactions with myself and the rest of the world. And what that has done for me has kind of caused me and forced me through the grief and the sadness of recognizing and the awareness and being aware of what's going on with the world and my brothers and sisters and my friends and my family, and not just what's happened to them, but what's happened to me and Ancestral down the line. I've done the research and gone back, and mind you, I have so much more to do. However, just the bare minimum, scratch the surface type of stuff that I have been intrigued about and have been looking into has brought this sense of identity in me that I did not, like, thinking about it makes me want to cry, that I did not know exists. And I say that because it's so important for me to realize that this cognitive distortion I have about myself that's been given to me as a label through psychiatry, which I'm also grateful for. None of what I'm saying is condemning anyone, any school of belief, or any thought. All of it has helped spiral my growth upwards to my highest self and where I am and discovering who I am. And I continuously use psychology and science to elevate my spiritual growth. So with that, I can say that the sciences behind it has helped me get to where I am today. And where I am at today is what I wanted to share with you, which is, it's so interesting how discovering my ancestral roots has given me more of an identity of unwavering doubt and faith and belief in myself and understanding who I am to my core and where I come from. And it's given me this sense of belonging, and it's giving me this sense of coming back to, and it's reviving the ancestral spirit within me that was once placated or once put down or once pressed down or put down or placed apart from me and passed down to me in a place where it doesn't feel good to be me. And now that I'm rediscovering my roots and discovering my roots and rediscovering what it means for me specifically to my core and my lineage and my life to be alive, I have to say that that distorted part of me that borderline considers to be unstable or insatiable, which I think my thirst for knowledge is insatiable, and logically and intellectually I can go down a rabbit hole. With that being said, I do have to understand these things from an experiential point of view, and despite the fact that I'm a seeker of truth and a student of life, I have to understand that reading the homework is not the same as doing the homework. So that's kind of, like I said, where I said I bring the balance of spiritual and intellectual into play. And so yeah, I just kind of wanted to share that. Another thing that has been going through my mind is about this thought and this notion that, you know, autistic kids or autism or special needs or disorders in the mental health facility, in the mental health community and the facilities and psychiatry, all of these mental health disorders and what we perceive to be as abnormal, I can't help but think there's something inside of me that wants to bring up this thought of how sacred that is or that was. And like I said, anything that has truth to it, that resonates with me to a T, I want to cry. And I can feel myself wanting to well up in tears right now. And I even think about the things such as our ancestors who bled and how sacred that was in specific tribes. Like in the Lakota tribe, women who bled, that time was considered a time of sacredness, and they were taken care of, and it wasn't deemed as ugly or as bad, and it was actually exonerated or exalted, excuse me. And so I've heard numerous times within the psychological community as well as the spiritual community that these psychological and psychiatric disorders that people have been quote unquote diagnosed with, and I don't think that it's bad to blame science at all. That's not what I'm saying. However, I do think that maybe our perspective of it could change a little bit. I've heard that schizophrenia is spiritually an acknowledgement of other realms, and they just don't know how to integrate that into our physical plane, so we deem them as useless or worthless or outcasts. And it's unfortunate because in our physical worldview, and this is my perspective, my physical worldview, those people who are schizophrenic and homeless, and we look at them like they're crazy, they just don't see the same world we do, and we don't see the same world they do. And in our worldview is normative, comparatively speaking. So it's just unfortunate. We don't know how to help them, quote unquote. Some of us do, some of us don't. But yeah, just like I was saying, I think that the psychiatry and the dimensions of mental illness and mental health and special needs kids and special needs disorders, and I think honestly it stems from a place of sacredness. And like I said, I can't help but keep going back to a place of my ancestors where they honored those things in people and they exalted them. And I just imagine, I've written poems about it as of late. Why can't I explain this to people? And I just imagine myself when I'm in recovery or when I'm in healing or when I'm in transformative processes, that I'm not discarded by society, that in my mind I'm being transferred back to the womb, that I'm being carried from my people back to the temple or back to the hut, and I'm being poured water over, and I'm being taken care of medicinally through spiritual means and some physical means, these spiritual rites and practices. So yeah, when I think of myself going back there, I just think of my ancestors and how exalted and exonerated I am and how blessed I am, and how I think of them looking at me like a gift, and when I'm curled up in the fetal position, that they're waving their hands over me saying how sacred and important this work is, that I'm doing, and they just hold a space for me. And I feel so safe there. And my identity to transform into, come out of, like this butterfly, like this cocoon, versus shifting, versus what I guess this thought needs to be developed a little more before I share it. But I do feel like in terms of borderline personality disorder, in my own case and my own, I think of a case, like I'm causally experienced in this little case, this little nutshell. The lack of identity that I've experienced in this world, I think does stem down to the fact that the environment that I've been placed in is because it doesn't match the internal experiences, both spiritually, ancestrally, mentally, physically, medicinally, that I've felt. So I really do appreciate, and I always say this, going back to the Black Lives movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, I'm so incredibly grateful to you all for speaking up, for saying your truth, for doing your thing, because, and this might be a little controversial to say, but I fucking appreciate your worth. I appreciate your value. I appreciate what you have to say, because when I think about my ancestors and how there's very little of us left who were colonized, I'm proud of you for continuing to do the work. And I think about what's happening now, and I see it as this middle of a colonization process, that it's not done, that's something that, it's not just something that has happened and it's over with and it's now written in our history books, our textbooks, which are not even about us, but we're in the middle of watching this war between, the white supremacists and the Black lives that has been stemming for years and years and years. And I just want to say that I'm fucking proud of you for surviving, and I couldn't be more faithfully acknowledging your efforts in this group of people who strive to thrive and survive under these conditions and under these means, and that regardless of what happens, that you are going to survive, and that I wish that people could see your worth and your value other than property and other than proprietal means. However, I support you, and I hope that by doing my work in ancestry, ancestral veneration, and ancestral acknowledgement, and honoring my roots and my guides and my mentors and where I come from, and being the divine embodiment of who I am, I pray that by becoming that light in myself, that I can spread the work and spread the knowledge and expand the veneration of what it is the Black Lives meaning is, and the Black Lives Matter movement is. And I will forever be grateful and acknowledge that with all of my heart, because I look up to that kind of spirit. I look up to that brilliance. I look up to that resilience, and I am forever in faithfulness to you, and I'm thankful for you, and I'm grateful for you. And when I think of, I mean, I don't know if you can see it within my body, but when I think of you, and spiritually and ancestrally, the work that you're doing, my whole body just kind of becomes to a grounded state. And just really quick, when I think of you, ancestrally, the Black Lives ancestrally, and where you come from and where we come from and where you guys are at today, my body calms itself, because when people ask me why don't I vote, my answer is, when the root of the tree is rotten, I don't trust its fruit. I will not eat its fruit. And when the anarchists say, what are you going to replace it with? I think of all the beautiful structures and the technologies and the political systems and the rights and the passages that you all had, that were in place, and that my ancestors had, and that my cultures had in place, that worked for us, that worked, not to say without conflict, but there was peace and harmony within our homes, and we handled conflict in a specific way that didn't require us to go and steal land from people or property from people, or to disrupt peace within other communities to gain our own. And that's just not what we do. When I think of your community and our community, and the honorable and valuable passage that I have within your community, that you allow me space inside of your spaces, I truly deeply appreciate that. Because when people ask me what would I replace it with, my ancestors would say, we had something in place, you just took it and you changed it. It worked. We had something that worked. So when I think of the Black Lives Matter movement, when I think of Black lives, when I think of ancestry, when I think of worship, when I think of ancient Egyptians, when I think of the Mayans, when I think of different cultures that were decolonized and killed and completely, for the most part, capitalized off this fucking earth, I think of you, and I think of the systems and the places and structures that you could have in place. And I do agree that all empires rise, fall. However, the one that we have isn't working anymore, so I would like for there to be one that does, and I honor you and the work that you're doing, because I would like to see that come back. And so I hope that by sharing these videos and sharing this experience with you that I can embody the divine light within me, so that I can truly make a difference in this world that not only talks about the divine light in me, honors the divine light in you, but because I embody and honor the divine light in me, I am capable of honoring the divine light within you. And I just wanted to share that. I love you all. Thank you so much for listening. I guess I am not a doctor or psychologist, however, I can speak within the borderline personality disorder community in my experience. Like I said, I'm not a psychologist. Don't take my word for advice. However, what has worked for me, and I guess, giving suggestions to anybody who wants to hear it, is that if you suffer severely from self-identity and your place in this world and where you belong, I suggest and I honor you in the fact that maybe looking into your ancestral DNA or ancestral veneration might be a good place for you to start. Understanding that the foods you eat might not match the foods that the people you look at and want to be like eat. The music that you listen to might spark a different type of embodiment or divinity within your Holy Spirit that doesn't necessarily match what other people are going through or what the norm says is cool. And I love you and I honor you, and I hope that you find your way and that you honor your ancestors, and I love them too, and I look out for you, and I hope that I know that they're looking out for you, and my ancestors are here with me trying to talk with your ancestors. I guess that's what I see, and I still have a lot of work to do with my ancestors and my guides and my spirits and my demons even. I count those as my guides as well, and so I honor them just as much as I honor my ancestors. And so, yeah, I hope this helps you. I hope this makes sense. I love you all, and goodbye.